Creating from the heart, the artistry of living. I'm here with firefighter Brandon Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, how did you get into firefighting?
Well, how I went into firefighting was just a rare event. I didn't consider being a firefighter initially. I just happened upon it, really. I went to a barber shop and happened to meet a captain also getting his hair cut, and he's like, "Hey, you seem like you're very fit," and he said, "Hey, well, did you ever consider being a firefighter?" And I was like, "No, I've never met a firefighter," and he was just like, "Yeah, well, I'm a firefighter." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, tell me about it." So
You look good.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, he told me all about it. He was a captain, and he was he had multiple years in, and essentially he said, "Hey, well, let me tell you about it, show you the ropes, and help me do some preliminary training." And then that's how I became a firefighter. Was just someone taking the time out and actually just paying it forward, and I'm better for it.
So, Brandon.
Yes.
I don't know. I've never had a long conversation with a firefighter before.
Okay.
But I don't know whether what you've done is out of the ordinary, but I remember talking to you, and you have talked about all the different ways that you have gone out of your way to be able to explain to somebody who's in the middle of a mess like that,
Yes.
who is the victim, if you will,
Yes.
what the next steps are going to be.
Oh, yes.
So, rumor has it
Mm-hmm.
that you went to work for an ambulance
Yes.
organization.
Yes.
And you did that because?
I just did it because I wanted to know a little bit more about that particular field, because in many cases I would have accounts from patients, and they said, "Oh, well, the reason why I'm having this issue in the middle of the night is because of whatever issue that came before it, where if they were essentially a dialysis patient, and they said, oh, now I'm getting all these issues because I did not get any dialysis." Then now I'm like, oh, you know what? I wonder why that is. I wanted to know a little bit more about everyone's plight, what was going on with them, and then that actually led me to apply with the ambulance services. And actually it helped being a firefighter, because in many cases, once you become an officer, you're writing many reports, and ultimately that would actually help my report writing considerably, as far as my medical reports, this vital information, and really just asking the right information, just for the reporting process. So, you never know where that inspiration is going to come from. That's going to improve how well you do in your main profession. So that's, you know what, if anyone was a firefighter, I would say, take some time out, if you can, part-time, and that's going to really improve the way that even your care with the patients,
So I also know that you've taken it upon yourself to go into the hospital and learn what happens there.
Yes.
After a fire.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we don't have as much time in that hospital setting, and in many cases you have apprehensive patients that say, "Well, I don't know what happens in the hospital.
Should I go?
Should I go? Should I not go? I'm afraid to go to the hospital." And in many cases, it's like, okay, well, why is there this apprehension? You should be checking yourself out, getting, different checkups, especially if it's emergency. And I wanted to know, okay, well, how can I alleviate that?
And what are you asking
Yeah.
them to do?
Exactly.
Right.
And ultimately, if I can't be confident in telling them, hey, this is how this process works, then it's going to, I need to be confident in explaining this information to them, and ultimately,
Then they'll go.
And then they go. And so yes, so ultimately, I wanted to know more about the hospital setting. We have many times where we will either help someone, either just being a middleman as far as going to an actual scene, and ultimately with that scene, sometimes we have hospital helicopters that will land at the scene of the accident, and then we will actually get them in there. And of course, we don't see anything. We of course set the scene for the helicopter to actually get them to the care that they need, but we don't know what happens after that.
And so now you do.
And now I do. So ultimately, even with our ambulance services, we will wheel the patient in many cases while we're doing CPR on the patient to an ambulance ER room, and then usually we get information necessary to do our reports. We're getting any items that we've utilized on the actual scene, and then we have to go because we have to get back. And then ultimately, it's just there's a question mark that I needed answered. So ultimately, being curious about
Yeah.
about the whole process, then I said, you know what? I want to know more. So ultimately, I went, became a security officer for the hospital, and ultimately, one of the things that was surprising was just the type of training that's necessary to be able to deal with patients. Because ultimately, being security, you're dealing with patients that could have any numerous medical things that are going on.
Not to mention psychological.
Psychological, yes, and ultimately some of that training actually does help as far as being able to calm patients down, being able to alleviate patients, and then being ultimately even the whole process of even combative patients. That was all training that was necessary that in the hospital setting, that I learned, and I did not know of any of that information until I took the steps to actually go in and actually do that. Even with the one of the main things that I would do, especially on some of the worst accidents, was actually go to the helipad and clear what they call is FOD, just checking for any items that might cause any damage to the helicopter, and then being able to get the patient from the helicopter into the hospital and being able to see what that process was as far as getting them into the ICU, intensive care units, and the like. And ultimately, it opened my eyes to kind of what nurses and other medical professionals do on the day-to-day.
And what the people who you are in a sense taking there, if they're still cogent,
Yes.
then they can be a little more comfortable that they know what's happening.
Yes. It's
Because I can imagine being freaked out if I were involved in a fire or if I were involved in an accident and somebody was taking me off to God knows where, and to have somebody say, this is what's going to happen next. What a gift.
Yes, it was a gift to me because ultimately, I don't want to over, I want to over deliver when it comes down to being able to communicate. I don't want to tell you something that's not true, or this is how this works, or this is how that works. Ultimately, that confidence that I have is what I'm trying to convey to actually alleviate people's, fears of what's going to happen next. And ultimately, that just changes the outcomes in many cases.
What a gift.
Yes.
How long have you been a firefighter?
16 years.
16 years.
Yes.
I knew you when
Yeah.
you were in high school.
Yes, that was many moons ago. Yeah, 16 years.
And you're not looking back.
No.
This is what you really love.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's always been something that I've always wanted to do. As far as it's always been foundational to my family. My uncle, he was a state trooper, retired now. He was 30 plus years of service to Indiana, and my parents, they were all essentially just founders of for service. Where my father was a founder of Pop Warner, and I had the ability to actually do a year in Pop Warner when they were founded in Michigan City, and also My mother was a founder of Essence Rare, and ultimately, that was one of the processes of I guess you'd call it a cotillion.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
a
So
cotillion, right?
yeah, so just being able to see that and be a part of that, that's just kind of.
No wonder you're so handsome when I go to fundraisers.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It does help to be able to understand that environment and being able to
Right.
talk and ultimately have the etiquette. Yeah, so that
And the confidence.
yes,
And the curiosity to meet all those other people.
yes. But you know what? That's many of the things that I've done is all as far as being able to put yourself out there. That's one of the reasons why I got into Rotary was just putting yourself out there, and ultimately, it was something that was modeled as far as being able to go into the unknown and start something new and really just sometimes it's not always produced. Sometimes you have to build it while you fly it. So
Yes, have to be curious.
yes.
I love it. What
Yes.
is Keen Fox in?
Well, you know what? It was something that I created just because of a need.
How did you know about the need?
Well, I was working in a hospital, Memorial Hospital, and I was actually just working in security. This is all during COVID, mind you.
This is over in South Bend.
In South Bend, yes. It's a major trauma facility. So, they have many units for very ill patients. And ultimately, it was just an experience being able to understand just based off of my own experience as a firefighter. But it opened me up to actually understanding what the needs are for the community. And ultimately, I did see a need that wasn't met. And it really was the people that were helping the people in Michiana.
What did they need?
They needed lodging. So that was one of the things that I saw that wasn't being met.
This is like contract workers,
Yeah,
like
contract worker,
doctors
yeah,
or nurses
yeah.
or people working independently?
Yes, correct. Independent, contractors. They were professionals that were coming in and to fill a need, and ultimately they were here. They were here for 3 or 4 months, sometimes longer, depending on if they extended their contract. And ultimately, they were having a hard time with lodging. They were working many hours during COVID, and ultimately they needed somewhere safe for lodging, and ultimately they wanted something furnished. They didn't want to be able to bring a lot of things in, and ultimately if there was a new contract, they needed to be able to pick up and go. So ultimately, I saw the need, and ultimately I said, you know what, let me see what I can do. And ultimately, I had the conversations, and ultimately been able to create a business to facilitate that.
How does Keen Fox Inn work?
Well, all
If
things,
I'm a person who's there on a contract,
yes.
first, how do I find out about you?
Well, how you find out about it is it was a whole new deep dive that I had to be able to understand that type of world. I always thought that someone would get employed and they would work, and they were from the area, and ultimately it completely changed my whole view of what actually happens in the hospital mindset, because ultimately what happens is they will come in from wherever the actual hospital gives their contracts out, and ultimately then the independent contractor, medical professional, comes in and they can either accept or reject that offer. And then it's really there's a lot of vetting that actually I did not understand. I thought, okay, well, once you come in, you're getting vetted by the hospital, but ultimately there's intermediaries that ultimately will vet them. They're vetted through their own certification process to actually get their licensing, and ultimately once they get to the hospital, they're vetted also again. And ultimately during that whole process, they're kind of in the shuffle where once they get the okay, in many cases they're already on assignment, and their assignment is finishing, and then they say, okay, well, you've been accepted, and then now they have to kind of pick up within a couple days from the end of their assignment to the beginning of a new assignment. And you've always had the understanding of how stressful it is to be able to move from location to location. I can only imagine doing it having the stressfulness of your own profession, and then
On
also
top of
on
it.
top of moving every 3 to 4 months. So ultimately, that's one of the things that I saw, and ultimately, there's a whole network of different websites that they utilize, and one of the ones that I've seen is Furnish Finders. So Furnish Finders is one of the websites that I came across that in many cases, the many conversations that I had with the medical professionals that they utilize to find furnished,
Places to live.
Yeah. So ultimately, I said, okay, well, if this is going to be one of the major items, then ultimately let me look into that, because ultimately, they've told me, of course, most people know about Airbnb, and it's kind of the Wild West when it comes down to lodging. So ultimately, this is what they said. Hey, this is what we use, and I'm okay. Well, if that's what you use, then this is what I'm going to help you to facilitate that. So once I got that information, then that really kind of got the ball rolling on getting individuals to come in and actually say, hey, you know what? Let me inquire about this.
Let me fix you up.
Yes.
So Keen Fox Inn, if somebody knows about it,
Yes.
they come in with saying, I'm going to be working in South Bend at Memorial Hospital. Where can I live?
Yes.
They say that to you?
Yes. Usually.
And then what do you do?
Okay. Well, usually what I do is one of the good things about that is that they are vetted so thoroughly to be able to actually do that. So that relieves some fears.
Stress
Stress
from all the people who are going to rent to them.
Yes, and ultimately, this is one of the things I always want to look forward to is a win-win-win. So everyone wins. Ultimately, the hospital wins by being able to have someone that is very, tested and good at what they do come to the hospital and actually improve the lives of the patients. And then ultimately, they win. They're being able to improve, get more experience, and ultimately, okay, well, hey, how can everyone win? And ultimately, one of the people that I always factor into is actually, the neighborhood, because ultimately the neighborhood also, wants, that's, you don't want any issues, because that's one of the things I see with Airbnb and other places where it's just like, you know, individuals that are also not there for professional means, and ultimately that's causing issue within the neighborhood.
Right.
Because ultimately, majority of the medical professionals are women, and ultimately that was one of the concerns is, being in a neighborhood where there's visibility, there's families, and just the comfort and safety that comes with that. So that was one of the things that I just wanted to consider as far as being able to meet a need, and ultimately that was kind of the way I went about doing that. Is okay, well, safety was top of mind, and ultimately, how can I do that? What needs to be done, and ultimately, am I serving all the needs?
So how do you get the places? How do you identify the places? Do you have a relationship with the places? How, once I'm a nurse, I'm coming in. I find out about Keen Fox Inn. I call you up and I say, I need a place.
What's interesting though is because there's a network, there's a lot of word of mouth where there will be other medical professionals that will
Say, call Keen Fox
call
Inn.
Keen Fox Inn. They are, fabulous.
And so what do you do? How do you find them the place?
How do I find the place? Well, as it stands, I only have one place right now. So
Okay.
ultimately, to expand, yes, I'll have multiple places. But ultimately, I look into what they need. They need essentially locations that are fairly close to the hospital, of course.
Right.
They're working long hours, and ultimately driving, an extended drive is sometimes just not feasible. They want safety, and ultimately
Right.
that's one of the things is I asked, what do you need? And then I just found a location that is, neighborhood, family friendly, safe, far enough away where it's away from the bustle, and and being able to act. They can decompress and recharge and be able to come back, yes, and do it again. And it's interesting because it's just, I'm being a firefighter. This is, something that I've yet to see, because ultimately the amount of hours that they're putting in and the amount of care that they're providing, and some, they have to take weeks, months. They take sabbaticals where they will go, 6 months of just work, 12.
So they need respite.
Yeah, they need rest. So ultimately, sometimes it's just like, what I've heard from them is that, oh well, you know what? Sometimes I'll go to a hotel and they're they're handling different needs, and they can't really confide in one need being, maintained. Where they will have medical professionals that will be there, and then someone will say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna have my birthday party, and then it's just like, okay, well, I want to get some rest. I have to do this again, and ultimately, that consistency was something that they were having a hard time with.
Okay.
The safety was a major factor, and ultimately, those type of locations, just being there where you don't know, there's individuals that are walking the
Well, you don't know
areas.
what you can count on.
Yeah,
You
you
don't know
can't.
who's gonna be in the room next door.
No,
You don't know what party's gonna be downstairs.
exactly.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's one of the things, is that it was something that I saw that I could understand the plight. Where
So you're growing, and that's
yes, growing. I cannot keep any vacancies. It seems like it's growing beyond my what my initial business, as far as the property was able to do. So now I have to
good. So
expand.
now you're expanding.
Yes, hopefully very
Awesome.
very rapidly though.
Good.
Yes, so yeah, there. I actually get calls every day, and it's just like, I kind of just, it's it's something.
People must trust you
Yeah,
because
yes.
because you have a reputation, so that people are calling you.
Yes, there's 5-star reviews. Everyone, loves the location, and ultimately want to expand that. And ultimately, it's sometimes where I call them and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm trying to move this along to scale this business, and they're like, okay, I'm going to be here. I'm showing up in a week, and I'm like, well, you know what? I need to, figure out the next process, and ultimately, it's just like, I did this for the reason of serving, and
Yes.
ultimately, even though the individuals that are in the suites right now are being served, it's just there's so much more
Right.
that needs to be done.
So, Keen Fox Inn in this area, which is South Bend, Northwest Indiana, kind of.
Yes.
And how do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can get a hold of me on furnishfinders.com. Ultimately, they can also contact me on keenfoxinn.com,
Okay.
and they can call me. There's 2 numbers. I have a Michigan City number and a South Bend number. The Michigan City number is a 219 area code, 229-0326, and the South Bend is 574-800-4425.
Awesome. Well, I wish you the best.
Yes.
Because you're only making the lives of people who serve us better, and B, the patients more safe and likely to have a good result because the people who are serving them are rested.
Yes.
Thank you, Brandon Lee, for your curiosity and innovation.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
See you next time.